If I talk to you about a certain sensation, will you be able to feel what I mean? Would you like to try on the idea I'm going to submit to you and see if you recognize it? I'm talking about the sudden realization that the rest of your life has already been defined for you. That you're moving along a set of tracks in a groove, as if you're on a train. Chuck, chuck, chuck. And that the destination is not necessarily one that you yourself have chosen. And that when you look at it, it doesn't really seem all that attractive to you. Do you recognize that feeling? It's scary, isn't it? I myself was really young when I first had my chug, chug, chug moment. I was in England, in Leicester. And unless you are a rugby fan, you probably don't even know where that is. Leicester is grey, wet, and bang, splat in the middle of England. I was a good pupil, not so bad, probably a bit like you. But when you were a good pupil in Leicester, the railway tracks ran to university. Teaching job, husband, 2 kids, semi-detached house, and that was really, really scary. But when I was 16, I came to France. And that was a little bit like the guy in the cartoon. You know the one? Woo, 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 boom, 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 boom. I fell in love with you. I fell in love with the French, with the language, with the wine, with France. And as my sweet 16-year-old self danced at the Whiskey a Go-Go in Juan-les-Pins, the nightclub had a ceiling that opened slowly to the starry sky of the south of France. And I felt as though a whole new world was opening up for me. So I jumped off those railway lines. I got away from the train and I started to plan how I could come to France to study French for 1 year. Well, that was long time ago. Of course, then I met a man, the man. We fell in love. And guess what? He was an INSA engineer. Yippee, jackpot, I've hooked an engineer. Except my husband veered off the tracks too. You see, we spent 2 years in Niger, where he was doing his civil corporation. And every weekend we would go out into the bush and picnic by the site of prehistoric rock engravings, of giraffes, of rhinoceros, of elephants, animals that hadn't been seen in the Sahara Desert for thousands and thousands of years. My husband's never worked as an engineer. He dreamed himself another profession. He is an archaeologist, prehistorian. Hey, I married Indiana Jones. When we came back, I started a workshop for 5th year INSA students to help them find their dream job. And I'm very happy to say that that workshop is still as successful today as it was all those years ago. And if you are in 5 GMC, you just got lucky. But I was really surprised to find that during this workshop, the 5th year engineers very often didn't have a dream job. In fact, many of them hadn't really thought at all about the job that they were going to do. They were just following the rails and applying to the same companies as all the other colleagues. EDF, Altron, Hilti. Now that's okay. But during their busy student life, there'd never been a time when they had sat down and tried to imagine a vision of a different future, a future which would be so attractive to them that they couldn't resist it, and which would provide an option to the rails. Except some. And I'm going to tell you about these guys. During my dream job workshop, I always organized a practice interview with a HR professional who came to conduct simulation interviews. None of the students ever really thought that they could turn this into an opportunity, except one. His name is Richard Sanchez. And he was a student the year when I invited a friend of mine who worked in the Human Resources Department at Salomon in Annecy. Salomon, international company, is quite an attractive potential employer. Richard Sanchez was doing his final year project in putting. And he was dreaming of California. The year the girl from Salomon interviewed him, Salomon had just purchased TaylorMade in California, makers of golf clubs. Richard dreamed how to turn the practice interview into a real interview. And he was employed by TaylorMade. He went to California. And by the way, when he came back, he went to work for Walt Disney. So I guess that as well as being an engineer, he was also really an Imagineer as well. Number 2, Stéphane Laporte, Sportitude. He was a javelin champion. And when he'd finished his studies, he wanted to continue with his sport rather than getting a job immediately, but he didn't really know how he could do that. Together, we applied to a university in America where he was able to join their sports team and in the laboratory to conduct research on the dynamics of the movement of the javelin. He had dreamt a way to combine the two. And incidentally, that's where he met his future wife, and I was so pleased to be invited to the wedding. Number 3, Jean-Jacques Monnet, GPM. I met him on a plane on the way to America. He was 30 and he just lost his job. Now, when you're 30, it's not a great time for an engineer to lose their job because he was too old to find a job as a beginner engineer and too young to get a job as a senior manager. And this was a time when the economy was really in a downturn. Jean-Jacques had spent 6 months looking for a job unsuccessfully until he dreamt of a really crazy way. He rented a quarter of a page in Le Monde newspaper and put on it a really great visiting card with the words "seeks challenging job" underneath. He had over 30 job offers. And the one he accepted took him around the world, and that's why he was on the way to Africa. But he was traveling first class. There was one student who helped me. This was in 1997. And my little company had been asked to provide an offer for the World Football Cup. I don't know why, because we were so tiny, I think it was a mistake. Or else we were just consulted to make up the numbers. But at that time, I was teaching English to a guy called Didier Morin, who was working for HP. Didier is a brilliant thinker. And he said to me, if you want to get this job, dream of a way to really make your company different from the others. And he coached me through all the negotiations. We got the contract. My company was responsible for all the translations, all the interpreting, for all the matches in the 1998 World Football Cup. Not only that, we won. Well, you won. Some of the best experiences in life happen when you take the time to dream what you could do if you could do anything. Now that philosophy may be a little difficult, especially for you guys, because it seems that you might have a double handicap. You're French, and you're engineers. You really need to take that Cartesian thinking and put it to one side for a moment. Winston Churchill said, there is a risk in every opportunity, but in every opportunity, there is a risk. Is that right? Doesn't sound right. What did he say, Winston Churchill? He says there's a risk in every opportunity, and in every opportunity there is a risk. Take the opportunity. Dare to dream. If you do that, you'll be giving yourself option, not merely following the rails, but envisaging new, exciting possibilities for yourself and your life. As you reach probably the end of your studies, I can't help but ask myself, how marvelous would it be if there were space for dreaming in the curriculum at INSA? How wonderful would that be if every Monday morning you went off to the Dream Boot Camp, where you are encouraged to think of big, crazy, out-of-the-box ideas? What difference would that make to the ranking of INSA in the list of the best engineering schools if you were the first school to introduce dream workshops and give your engineers credits in their diploma for their wonderful dreams? I don't know what you think of that idea, but I think it's pretty neat. And if you like it, when are we going to start?